Hello, good evening everyone. At the time I'm recording this, it is your boy GZTV back with another video, and we're back with more movie reviews. Now obviously you guys are probably expecting me once again to get into Supergirl, but I decided, let's make a comic book week when Spider-Man Brand New World comes out and watch both of those movies in the same week. For now, we're going to focus on kind of a comedy slash miscellaneous. I have a comedy list and then I have a bunch of movies that I want to see, and this is going to start kind of a phase of more modern classics that people are lauding, and Nobody is one of them, including the sequel. So we're going to be watching this, then the sequel, and then Knives Out, and then whatever sequels come after that. So this is the movie where Saul Goodman becomes an action star. What the fuck? Seriously, one of the craziest things about Nobody is that even 5 years after this movie came out, I still can't believe Bob Odenkirk took this risk so late into his career. This is some Nicolas Cage and long legs type shit. Take an actor who's so synonymous with one specific character and genre, throw him into something completely different, and somehow it fucking works. I'm here to say I enjoyed this movie because Nobody is basically the story of an ordinary, miserable 9-to-5 suburban father. We'll obviously get into the premise and all the nitty-gritty here in a second, who gets tired of being stepped on, questions his masculinity, snaps, and starts brutally murdering Russian gangsters. Except he's not actually an ordinary guy, and that's where this movie becomes a little more interesting than your average normal guy becomes a badass action movie. Hutch Mansell has a past, his father, his brother, they all have a past, and his wife even knows about his past. The Russians eventually learn about his past. Do I completely understand the fucking past? No, not really, and that's probably my biggest problem with Nobody. It's probably what's stopping it from being like an elite start to a franchise, even though I'm still very intrigued to watch the sequel. But when Bob Odenkirk, Christopher Lloyd, and fucking RZA are brutally murdering Russian gangsters together, who gives a shit? So getting into the premise, Bob Odenkirk plays Hutch Mansell, a seemingly ordinary suburban father stuck in the most repetitive existence imaginable, something that even I could relate to now that I work a full-time job and I'm out of college. You wake up, you go to work, you come home, you take the trash out too late, every single week he misses the garbage truck, and then the whole fucking thing repeats. You know things are happening and you miss something routinely. Yeah, his marriage is basically dead, his son doesn't really respect him as a man, his father-in-law and brother-in-law seemingly kind of question him and some of his decisions. You know your past, we were in the fucking FBI and you're gonna let these robbers walk all over you. And then one night, two people break into his house. Hutch has the opportunity to fight back, and interestingly enough, at first he doesn't. This movie is actually pretty unique. I have to give it a lot of kind of credit because just the revelations and the implications and everything that kind of goes into this movie is super unique. He lets them leave. Suddenly everybody looks at Hutch like he's a fucking coward. But what nobody realizes is that Hutch isn't some helpless suburban father. He's a former government auditor with an extremely violent past, and obviously given that he worked for a government agency, he's gonna have to know how to be in combat, so he's secretly a badass. And after discovering that his daughter's kitty cat bracelet is missing, the dude just snaps. So getting into the good, I know these seem kind of formulaic, these reviews, and I kind of repeat the same shit, but we obviously have to start with the main role of Bob Odenkirk. We have to start with the obvious because even before this movie, long before this movie, matter of fact, this isn't even his most memorable role. Obviously we know him from Better Call Saul, but he's awesome. I mean, I love when actors experiment as well, and just the experimentation, just kind of the direction they take here with this actor who's not normally an action star and even looks the part for an average Joe. And it's great. I mean, I love when somebody who has been doing one thing for years suddenly decides, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna try something completely different. And obviously Bob Odenkirk will probably always be remembered as Saul Goodman, similar to even Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul for Jesse Pinkman and Walter White. And obviously that's one of the greatest television characters ever created, and most of the characters on that show are some of the greatest television characters ever created. Think of like Rick from Walking Dead, the actor, will always be remembered as that. Millie Bobby Brown will probably always be remembered as 11, just kind of some examples. But physically, this might be the most impressive performance of his career from an action standpoint, from a badassery. Maybe not from a personality, because obviously Saul Goodman. This movie actually made me start to rewatch Better Call Saul because I love Bob Odenkirk. I miss seeing him on a screen. I mean, look at this guy. Bob Odenkirk obviously looks like an ordinary dude. That's what makes the entire thing work. If you cast Dwayne Johnson as Hutch Mansell, the movie doesn't work. You'd immediately look at him and think, yeah, obviously this guy's going to beat everybody's ass, but Bob Odenkirk, no way. And the movie uses that perfectly. I think the repetitive opening is great, kind of as a representation of a suburban lifestyle as a 9-to-5. He's living the same miserable existence every single day, goes to work, comes home, again, his marriage is kind of falling apart, the pillow and beneath the two, his family doesn't seem to respect him and they kind of fall out of love with each other, and underneath everything you can tell something is slowly building. He's miserable and then he snaps. He's done with it. And obviously the action is really good. The action is A1. You see see the writers of John Wick actually wrote this movie. So of course the choreography and the story and all that is going to be incredible. The bus fight, let's just get in that because that is awesome. That's one of the most memorable scenes of the entire movie. I have to point it out. What makes it interesting is kind of the motivation behind it. He doesn't have like a John Wick level tragedy. It's not like some build up. They didn't kill his dog. They didn't like attack his family or anything, murder his wife, kidnap his daughter. This dude is just tired of it. It's just like going back to his past life, not being able to let go, and in a fit of rage he just loses his shit. He's tired of being doubted, just tired of everything. Stepped on, people questioning him, pretending he isn't the person he used to be. When he sees a group of drunken assholes harassing a woman standing next to them on a bus, he basically thinks, finally you give me a reason to beat the fuck out of somebody, and then all hell breaks loose. And I think that is a really cool concept, and it's very unique for a action movie. And obviously the violence in this movie is phenomenal. I like how brutal it is. Now, I'm not going to go as far as say it's like a Sisu level, because that's a franchise certainly we watched recently, but it's brutal, messy, bloody, and Hutch gets destroyed. I mean, that's important. He doesn't walk under the bus and effortlessly destroy 5 people. He's not an Avenger. He's not a superhero. He is a regular guy that just happens to have a violent past. He gets stabbed, punched, thrown around. He barely survives this ordeal, but you can almost see how alive he feels finally, just that adrenaline rush of being able to take it out on people. And that's an interesting concept. Violence is almost an addiction for Hutch. He spent years suppressing who he actually is, and the second he gets a taste of his old life, there's no going back. And obviously you have to bring up the fact again that this is the same writers from John Wick, but this movie does a very good job as well at really distinguishing itself. And the comparison's going to happen. You have Russian gangsters, secret past, stylized violence, gold bars, criminal organizations, but I don't really see nobody as some John Wick ripoff. Obviously it was somewhat inspired by those films, but the scale is completely different. John Wick is more seen as a mythological figure. Everybody knows him, fears him. He's the Baba Yaga, like he literally has a nickname to him. Hutch Mansell is a middle-aged suburban father having the most violent midlife crisis imaginable, and I actually think that's enough to give nobody its own identity. It's a very, very unique plot, and I really respect it for that, and I'm really interested to see where they take this thing. Hutch has a facade, a family, a job, an entire fake life he's trying to maintain, almost like a Dexter Morgan type of character, and John Wick doesn't have that. Now, is the action as good as John Wick? Absolutely not, but John Wick has like the greatest action in my opinion in movie history, so that's not exactly an insult, and nobody gets pretty close at times. Getting into kind of the side characters with Christopher Lloyd and RZA, I absolutely love them being here. Who came up with this trio, man? It's genius. Bob Odenkirk, Christopher Lloyd, and RZA fighting the Russian mob. I mean, what a movie, what an element to the movie. Christopher Lloyd is obviously an icon. Dr. Brown, I think, from Back to the Future. I had no idea how involved he was eventually going to become. First, he's just Hutch's elderly father living in a retirement home. He's done with the shit. Like, he's not looking to get action. And then people show up to kill him. Bad idea. You guys underestimated this guy. Watching Christopher Lloyd pull out shotguns and start annihilating people might be one of the greatest things about this entire movie. It's so ridiculously violent that it becomes funny in a similar way to Sisu. And that's something nobody understands extremely well. The action doesn't have to be serious all the time. Sometimes watching an elderly man blast Russian gangsters with a shotgun is just funny. And then you have RZA as Harry, which is even crazier because we literally just watched him in American Gangster. I was confused about the radio communication at first and about whether Harry was even alive. I'm still a little confused about his entire backstory, but seeing the whole family materialize for the finale was awesome. I desperately hope nobody too gives Christopher Lloyd and RZA more screen time. I don't even know if Christopher Lloyd's still alive. It's been 5 years, but these three have something together. And there's a lot to say. Getting into the action, this is easily the greatest part of Nobody. The action is incredible. The bus fight, home invasions, Hutch burning the obstact money, the car chases, factory finale, it's all great. What I appreciate most is the creativity. This isn't a James Bond. Hutch doesn't have Q giving him a bunch of high-tech gadgets. He has to improvise. Shotguns, traps, explosives, nail bombs, claymores, a shield, Christopher Lloyd going insane, RZA joining the fight, the straw in the guy's throat so he doesn't choke on his own blood, the hidden gun in the refrigerator. There are so many little moments, but the movie finds creative ways to make the violence entertaining. And the music is perfect. The musical numbers that this thing goes with, nonchalant nature of that. I love when action movies play these upbeat songs while absolute chaos is happening. We've seen it in Deadpool happen. It's great. There's something about that. It always works. Nobody knows exactly what kind of movie it is, and that is important. And obviously, getting into the villain, I actually liked Yulian as well. I think he is a great villain. I think he plays a great role. Is he a stereotypical Russian gangster? Absolutely. We've seen this character approximately 7,000 times, but at least he's entertaining. His introduction alone is insane, with the karaoke and the dancing and the ridiculousness of it all, and him just being a psychopath. He's legitimately dangerous. I also appreciate that he actually fights and joins the action. I never really liked the villain that sits up in the coop, watches his henchmen go. He's not just some mastermind. While everybody handles his business, he's willing to get involved. And the Obshok money storyline was a little confusing. I'm not even sure if that's a real thing. I guess it is like a 401k for the Russian mob. I guess they tried to kind of explain that. And Hutch burning that money is like the ultimate declaration of war, I guess. Obviously, Julian isn't some Bond villain by any means, like a Lashif or a Silva. He isn't one of the greatest action villains ever, but he's fine, passable, threatening enough, and entertaining. And for a 90-minute action movie, that's all I really needed. So getting into the bad, I just think there's a lot of mystery with this, and I don't know if they did that to plan on a sequel and plan on answering questions, but Hutch's backstory is extremely confusing. This is where nobody kind of started losing me throughout the runtime. I understand the basics. Hutch used to be a government auditor. His father was involved in that world. His brother is involved somehow. His wife knows about his past. He apparently met Becca in Rome. Okay, who is everybody else? Who's this Alan guy that he tried to tell like this allegorical story to a bunch of guys that were unconscious? What exactly is the business Hutch is trying to buy? Like, who is he auditing for that his father-in-law and brother-in-law work for? Why does he want it? What exactly happened between Hutch and Harry that kind of made them separated? It's almost like they reconciled throughout this movie. Was Harry also an agent? Why is Christopher Lloyd still connected to this world? How did Hutch meet Becca exactly? Was it during an operation? Why did he retire from being in the FBI? Did he want to settle down with the family? I don't know. The movie throws all this random lore at you and then just keeps moving. And maybe that's the point. The movie is called Nobody. Maybe Hutch is supposed to remain mysterious, but there's a difference between mystery and confusion, and nobody occasionally crosses that line. I don't need a 45-minute exposition sequence explaining Hutch's entire childhood, but give me something. My hopes are Nobody 2 expands on this, because you can only keep the mystery going for so long before I start asking questions. And also just getting into the family. I didn't really care about any of the family characters. It didn't completely work. I mean, Hutch's marriage is basically dead. This man and his wife have a pillow wall separating them in bed. I mean, Jesus Christ, just get divorced already. What the hell are we doing? And while I understand the idea, I never completely bought their relationship in the first place. The family almost feels like background noise. Son doesn't respect him. Obviously, his daughter loves him. It's like the daddy's girl. His wife knows about his past, but none of those relationships are developed enough for me to become emotionally invested. And then there's the kitty cat bracelet. This entire movie basically happens because Hutch thinks his daughter's bracelet was stolen. I don't even think it was this entire time, and he's like, oh, what a shame. You know what I mean? That's hilarious. It's also ridiculous. I guess it almost works to an extent. It is kind of weird for the whole movie and damn near the whole franchise consequentially to be based on this thing. The movie tries to use it as evidence that Hutch is like this loving family man. I don't completely buy it, and I know he cares and he's trying, but Bob Odenkirk plays Hutch with such a monotone, emotionally detached personality, and I know that's probably exactly how he was casted for the role, but it's sometimes difficult to understand what these relationships actually mean to him. Again, a lot of the negatives that I have, I'm hoping they get somewhat erased with the movie we got last year, Nobody 2, because I'm certainly going to check that out purely out of intrigue and also because I somewhat enjoyed this movie. Getting into the okay, I'm a little mixed on just the story in general. I know I kind of like how distinct it is and how unique it is, and the setup is kind of cool, but the story isn't nearly as engaging as the action. I'm not going to say this is like gore porn or they're trying to bait you with a spectacle, bait you with action, and that's all it's about. But the movie's under 90 minutes. It is extremely fast. It doesn't waste much time, but somehow between the action sequences, I occasionally found myself wondering, what exactly are we doing here? And again, that kind of harps back into the bad where we were talking about the backstory being kind of foggy. Why is this happening? Who is this person? What does this organization do? And then Bob Odenkirk starts beating the shit out of somebody, and I stop caring. It's cool. Again, the action is top notch. The way they utilize the action and the way they're resourceful with everything and how everything kind of transpires. It is very fairy tale. It is very storybook to the very genre that this thing is going for, but it works. It plays out how an action movie usually plays out, but it's just the lore behind it and the way they kind of set it up. It doesn't really justify what the hell is happening, even though I very much enjoy it. So still kind of mixed on those things. So getting into the review, Nobody is a really good action movie that I think could have been great with a little more substance. I still think it's good. Bob Odenkirk is awesome. The fact that Saul Goodman became a legitimate action star is incredible. More importantly, I bought it. I bought Bob Odenkirk as Hutch Mansell, and him as this miserable suburban father, and him as a former government operative, and him brutally murdering Russian gangsters. The action is phenomenal. The violence is creative. Christopher Lloyd is hilarious. hilarious. RZA is a great inclusion. Julian is a solid villain, and the movie understands how to have fun. But the story, a little murky, the family underdeveloped, the backstory confusing, and Hutch's motivations occasionally made me wonder why any of this was happening. And that's maybe what makes nobody interested. This isn't a revenge story, it's a midlife crisis with a body count. Hutch isn't fighting because somebody killed his family, he's fighting because he spent years suppressing who he actually is. He's miserable, tired, emasculated, and eventually snaps. That's actually a pretty interesting concept. Is it dramatic? Absolutely. Is it ridiculous? Of course. But watching Bob Odenkirk, Christopher Lloyd, and RZA wage war against the Russian mob, yeah, I'll take it. Nobody isn't John Wick, and it doesn't need to be. It has its own identity, own style, and enough potential that I'm genuinely excited to see what the sequel does with these characters. Just please explain some of this backstory. I'm giving it a 7.9 out of 10. It is a brutal, creative, and ridiculously fun action movie with an awesome against type performance from Bob Odenkirk. The action is phenomenal. The story is a little murky, but Saul Goodman, Doc Brown, and RZA is absolute cinema, and I respect the hell out of it. Yeah, again, 7.9 out of 10. That's been your boy GZTV though. I'm out. I'm going to head to bed. This would be coming out Monday the 13th. And we're going to watch Nobody 2. We're going to get into Knives Out. And then there's a couple of other movies I have in mind, but we'll get to it when we get to it. Here in a couple of weeks, obviously, Spider-Man and Supergirl will be on my agenda. So, peace out, y'all.